Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Vernon urges Bill to step in when Leslie's renovations cross the line from inconvenient to intolerable, not out of malice but because Vernon believes Bill can consolidate his fragile standing with the Dupree family by demonstrating decisiveness and loyalty. That simple request, casually phrased over the phone with an undertone of neighborly exasperation, is the kind of seemingly small event that splinters the lives around it. It is a hinge. On one side, the ordinary irritation of jackhammers and late-night deliveries; on the other, an intricate web of favors, debts, failed marriages, and the kind of pride that makes people choose struggle over surrender. The story opens on the hum of electric saws and the sharp metallic scent of new lumber, which feel almost conspiratorial, the kind of domestic chaos that both reveals character and forces choices. Vernon's appeal to Bill is not merely about noise. It is about the politics of belonging in a neighborhood where reputations are currency and silence is a rare commodity. From the moment Vernon makes the call, there is a pressure in the air heavier than dust, the weight of expectation that Bill will behave as the community's fixer, the man who smooths edges and buries disputes beneath the lawn. Vernon frames his request as an opportunity you can win them over, he tells Bill, his voice steady with the certainty of someone who has always played the long game. To Vernon, stopping Leslie's disturbance is a chance to align himself, and by extension Bill, with the Duprees, whose social capital and long-standing networks are the sort families remember when they need places at tables, references for jobs, or a voice during zoning board meetings. But what Vernon doesn't say and perhaps does not want to face is that trust is not earned by one act. It is a ledger that takes years to balance, and one well-timed intervention can tip the balance, for better or worse. Vernon's ask is tactical. It is also the kind of thing that uncovers who is willing to short-circuit their own life to pay another's social debt. Bill's response, however, is the first crack in that neat calculus. The film teases that this time Bill might refuse. That possibility is seismic. Bill is not a man accustomed to saying no. He is known for being present when others expect him, for being the glue in fraying situations. Yet the script plants his refusal firmly in fatigue and fractured inner life. Bill is at the center of other storms. He is attempting to disentangle Danny and Andre's marriage, a task that drags at him emotionally and morally, and he is trying with clumsy tenderness and bitter regret to soothe Haley's anger. These obligations are themselves acts of repair and rescue, and they bleed into his capacity to take on more. The quiet cruelty of Bill's predicament is that every attempt to help someone else makes him less available to help a different neighbor, and in a small town the optics of refusal are often indistinguishable from betrayal. The film's tease is meticulous about why Bill might refuse. He is not simply exhausted, he has been consumed by the sticky aftermath of a marriage that might not be salvageable and by the moral ambiguity of intervening in another's marital breakdown. Danny and Andre's situation is not a side plot. It is a mirror that throws back Bill's failures and his aching desire to be useful in a life that sometimes feels pointless. Each meeting with Danny, each whispered consolation to Andre, becomes an act of emotional laundering. Meanwhile, Haley's simmering anger aimed partly at Bill, partly at the world requires a different kind of labor, patience, sleight-of-hand apologies, and the impossible task of convincing someone that they still have value in Bill's life. Bill's upbringing taught him to be the man who does things. He fixes cars, he negotiates neighborly disputes, he runs errands. But the modern world demands more than simple doing. It demands emotional labor, nuance, and a willingness to hold contradictions. When Bill considers Vernon's request, he sees the tally of promises he has already made, and he recognizes that he might finally be out of liquidity. Anita's role in this tangled equation is crucial and quietly subversive. Where Vernon seeks to marshal Bill as an agent of civic diplomacy, Anita insists on self-reliance. She tells Vernon in a voice that mixes exasperation and a hard-learned pragmatism that she will handle Leslie herself. This is not mere bravado. Anita has been shaped by encounters with unscrupulous people, contractors who promise the moon and deliver a roof full of leaks, salesmen who sell warranties on products that do not exist. When she says the world is full of fraudulent contractors, She is not speaking from theory but from lived experience. Her assertion that Leslie fell prey to one of these charlatans is both diagnosis and indictment. It reveals a moral economy where the vulnerable, those who want to believe in fair exchanges, are preyed upon by those who understand that compassion can be commodified. Anita's plan, however, is ethically complex. She is determined to shore up Leslie's project not as an act of charity but as a demonstration of competence and control. But beneath that determination lies a quieter admission: Anita has always measured herself through results. She is the kind of person who assesses risk and takes responsibility. That posture can look noble. It can also veer toward manipulation when it involves another person's livelihood. By relying on a contractor to enact her plan, the very role she admonishes as dangerous, Anita reveals a contradiction. She rails against fraudulent tradespeople while secretly leaning on the artisan trickster she claims to despise. The film frames this as a human failing rather than hypocrisy. Sometimes the only available tool is the one you criticize, and the path to resolution is paved with compromises. The sequence that follows the unraveling of Leslie's reconstruction is a study in how projects can become proxies for identity. For Leslie, the renovation is not a mere upgrade, it is reclamation. After a string of losses and humiliations, the new house represents a clean slate, an object that can be crafted into a statement of survival. When the contractor's shortcomings start to show: crooked tiles, misaligned beams, a foundation that seems to settle more than it should, it is not just money being lost, it is a narrative of dignity being chipped away stroke by stroke. The film takes care to show the slow violence of deferred maintenance, the way delays compound into existential threat. Money disappears in ways that are both mundane and grotesque: a bill here, an unanticipated fee there, uninvoiced for materials that never arrive. Leslie watches as her nest, which she painstakingly envisioned, becomes a ledger of betrayal. Yet Leslie is not defeated. Her response is not resignation but escalation. If one contractor proves incompetent or corrupt, she will hire another. This is where her character becomes both admirable and dangerous. She is stubborn in a way that is almost ideological. To admit defeat would be to acknowledge vulnerability not only to herself but to the community that is watching. The film paints her resourcefulness vividly. She meets with contractors in fluorescent lit offices, she studies blueprints with the intensity of someone studying scripture, and she negotiates contracts with a coolness that masks a roiling anxiety. Her confidence, the belief that she has enough funds to press forward, is rooted in financial reality and in self-preservation. Money is not limitless, and the audience feels the tension of every dollar spent. Yet her resolve becomes contagious. Where others see risk, she sees options. The narrative uses her tenacity to complicate the idea of victimhood. She is wronged, but her response to wrongdoing complicates the moral calculus. Is she simply fighting for a house, or is she fighting to assert her right to refuse diminished expectations? Anita's intervention, however, has consequences she did not foresee. Her plan, intended to slow Leslie just enough to expose the contractor's malpractice and thus free Leslie to pursue legitimate repairs, misfires. The ripple effects of a stalled site are both practical and social. Materials left exposed to weather warp. Subcontractors, whose own livelihoods depend on timely completion, pull their crews and seek other projects. Insurance premiums rise, and the bureaucratic tangle of permits and inspections throws the timeline into chaos. What Anita meant as a surgical strike becomes a sap. It drains momentum and compels Leslie to spend more time and money than she anticipated. Importantly, the film does not depict this as a mere plot complication. It treats it as a moral problem. Anita's good intentions inadvertently harm Leslie. The audience is invited to sit with the discomfort of a righteous act that produces collateral damage. And Anita is not immune to that damage. She, who promised to shoulder the burden alone, finds herself directly affected by the delays she themselves engineered. The construction site's overflow affects her, a shared driveway clogged with delivery trucks, late-night work that keeps her from sleeping, the stress of being entangled in legal wrangles when subcontractors threaten litigation. The narrative pays attention to how community disputes are rarely isolated. When one household's battle spills into the street, Everyone feels it. Anita's stoic self-sufficiency is tested by the proximate inconvenience and the moral weight of having contributed to another person's hardship. There is an irony at play. Her attempt to protect Leslie from dishonesty has had the opposite effect, reinforcing the very precariousness she set out to eliminate. This tangled network of motivations reveals the film's central fascination with how small decisions accumulate into dramatic consequence. Vernon's appeal was minor in intent but catalytic in effect. Bill's potential refusal is more than personal weakness. It is the site of a social contract being renegotiated. Anita's competence becomes a kind of hubris. Her reliance on the systems she hates, contractors, invoices, legal forms, exposes her to the same vulnerabilities as those she condemns. Leslie's resilience becomes a force that both empowers and isolates her. Each character's choice is not merely plot propulsion but ethical excavation. The story asks the audience to examine why people choose the actions they do, and what values those choices reveal. The film's scenes around the construction are sensory and specific. There is the steady rhythm of a pneumatic drill like a heartbeat gone mechanical, the glitter of sawdust in afternoon sunlight, the dull thump of a forklift moving pallets across gravel. These details are not decorative. They function as a kind of chorus that keeps returning to the central theme of work as identity. Work builds and destroys. It is the literal act of building that becomes symbolic of the characters' attempts to reconstruct parts of themselves. The screenplay lingers on the micro-moments, a contractor's evasive gaze, a stack of unpaid invoices, a handwritten note left on a door that reads "Notice. Stop work order." Those elements ground the drama in a tangible reality and make the stakes feel immediate. There is also a network of smaller, human conflicts that the film teases without resolving in this early arc. Neighbors take sides in the construction dispute. Their allegiance is more revealing about their own fears and aspirations than about the parties involved. Some relish the drama as a welcome distraction. Others see the situation through the lens of risk to property values. The Duprees, whose favor Vernon covets, are watching with a peculiar mixture of benevolence and calculation. They are the kind of family who see a problem as an opportunity to demonstrate moral superiority. They will offer counsel in a way that reinforces their status rather than alleviates pain. Vernon's calculation that aligning with them could be advantageous is poignant because it shows how social climbing can blunt the empathy necessary for true neighborliness. Bill's inner landscape is the most rendered. He moves through the neighborhood as a man at the edge of depletion. The film sequences his days with a rhythm that communicates exhaustion. He wakes early, goes to labor that pays in small increments of satisfaction, and returns to nights where reconciliation with Haley feels both urgent and impossible. His attempts to intervene in Danny and Andre's marriage are fraught with the knowledge that his involvement could either save or doom relationships. He finds himself bargaining with himself. Intervene here and you might lose someone there. His potential refusal to help Vernon is thus not selfishness but an act of preservation. The camera lingers on his hands, calloused, stained with a day's work, as if to ask whether hands built for fixing cars and folding fences are adequate tools for mending hearts. Meanwhile, Leslie's character arc is both sympathetic and combustible. The financial toll of her stalled renovation is a pressure cooker for making choices that might seem irrational in other contexts. She doubles down, not out of recklessness but out of a need to exert agency in a life that has been repeatedly compromised. The film makes clear that her persistence is not merely obstinacy but a survival strategy. She navigates contractors' offices with a tactical awareness of how to make offers, how to demand guarantees, and how to leverage what little social capital she has left. That process is rendered with a keen eye for how the less privileged negotiate power. They become experts in barter, in calling in favors, and in turning small wins into leverage. Leslie's refusal to back down destabilizes those who sought to contain her, and the narrative uses this defiance to complicate easy sympathy. As the early acts unfold, Several unanswered questions collect like dust at the corners of rooms. Will Bill step back in and sacrifice his fragile progress with Danny and Haley for the promise of public approval from families like the Duprees? Can Anita repair the damage she unwittingly causes without wrecking her own moral standing? Will Leslie's puppet-like succession of contractors find a genuine artisan who can rebuild not just her house but her trust? And what will be the cost if the construction drags into colder months, when financial resources dwindle and tempers harden? The film builds these questions not as puzzles to be solved quickly but as an invitation to sit with the simmering uncertainty of human life. This portion of the story refuses the tidy pleasure of closure. It intensifies the stakes, deepens relationships, and tightens the screws on each character so that when the coming scenes demand resolution, the emotional currency will be rich and messy. The audience is left with a tableau of unresolved tensions, the sound of drills fading into the night, a voicemail from Vernon left on Bill's phone, Anita poring over contracts under the kitchen light, and Leslie standing in the half-built doorway of a house that looks suddenly smaller and more fragile than it did in her dreams. The film's early arc, as teased, is a meticulous study in how ordinary acts of construction and neighborhood quarrel become the scaffolding for larger moral reckonings, and it rehearses the idea that the acts we perform for others often reveal more about who we are than the reasons we give for doing them.